When we think of conquest, we often imagine Europe expanding into Africa, carving colonies and empires across the continent. But if the story had been different, what if instead of being conquered, Africa had conquered Europe? Today we explore this alternate history, not fantasy, but a serious question of power, resources, and missed opportunities. Could Africa ever have ruled Europe? For centuries, Africa was not a passive land waiting to be colonized. It was home to powerful empires: Mali, Songhai, Benin, Oyo, Ethiopia, Congo, and many more. These states had trade networks that stretched across the Sahara and the Indian Ocean. Armies that could rival European forces, and leaders who commanded loyalty and respect. And at the same time, Europe was not always strong. During the so-called Dark Ages, much of Europe was fractured, poor, and constantly at war with itself. This raises the question, could Africa in its golden stage have turned the tables? In fact, history already gives us glimpses of what might have happened. The Moors, North African Muslims, ruled Spain and Portugal for over 700 years. They built cities, universities, and irrigation systems that shaped Europe's development. In the East, under Egypt under the Fatimids and later the Mamluks, held back crusaders and influenced the Mediterranean politics. Ethiopia too held its own against European invasions. These examples prove that African powers could and did project power into Europe. The conquest of Europe was not impossible. It was simply never fully pursued. Africa had the wealth to compete. Mali's legendary emperor Mansa Musa was said to be the richest man in history. His gold flooding markets as far away as Cairo and Mecca. West African kingdoms controlled salt, gold, ivory, and manpower. With these resources, they could have funded large armies and fleets. The challenge was technology and geography. Europe's ships and guns advanced rapidly during the 15th century, giving them an edge. But had African states invested earlier in maritime expansion and centralized their resources, the story might have unfolded differently. Imagine if Mali, instead of focusing only on trans-Saharan trade, had built ocean-going fleets to cross the Atlantic or dominate the Mediterranean. Imagine if Benin and Oyo had united their armies and resources to expand beyond West Africa, or if Ethiopia had allied with Muslim powers in the north to launch joint campaigns into southern Europe. United and well prepared, Africa could have marched into divided Europe, seizing ports, controlling trade, and reshaping global history. But history is not just about possibility. Internal rivalries, fragmented politics, and the vast size of the continent made unity difficult. While Europe was gradually centralizing under stronger monarchies, Africa often remained divided into smaller states. These divisions made it easier for Europe to exploit, conquer, and colonize centuries later. It wasn't weakness that doomed Africa. It was disunity. So could Africa have conquered Europe? Yes. Under the right circumstances, the wealth, the armies, and the knowledge were there. But history turned another way. Instead, Africa became the conquered rather than the conqueror. Yet this alternate history reminds us of Africa's true potential. The same continent that built empires like Mali and Benin could rise again, not to conquer others, but to reclaim its place as a global leader. This is not just a what if, it's a lesson. Africa's future depends on unity, strategy, and vision. If the past shows us what was possible, the future can show us what is still within reach. Subscribe to the African Lens for more bold history, powerful stories, and the questions others are too afraid to ask.